Welcome to the second call in our in our spring-summer 2012 Lunch and Learn series titled Innovations in Teen Philanthropy. Today we will hear from Stephanie Goldfarb, Voices, the Jewish Teen Foundation at the Jewish United Fund, Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago, about her year leading an alumni foundation, from Gilad Salmon from the Jewish Teen Foundations at the San Francisco-based Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Funds about online fundraising, and from Leah Siskin from the Jewish Youth Philanthropy Initiative at the Partnership for Jewish Life and Learning about JYPI's collaborations with synagogues and other local nonprofits. Let me tell you a bit about our presenters. Stephanie is the Teen Philanthropy Coordinator at the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago. She has been running Voices, Chicago Jewish Teen Foundation, for 2 years and launched the first Voices alumni program last year. Stephanie recently completed graduate school at Loyola University, where she received a master's degrees in clinical social work and gender studies. She accepted a full-time position at the Jewish Federation upon graduation. Congratulations to Stephanie for her recent graduation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Leah Siskin, our second presenter today, is the Jewish Youth Philanthropy Initiative, or JYPI, Director and Associate Program Officer at the Partnership for Jewish Life and Learning in Rockville, Maryland. She is passionate about empowering youth to create change and has spent the last 6 years doing this through the Partnership's JYPI program. The current focus of her work is on building community capacity for teen philanthropy in the greater Washington area. Leah is a facilitator for Rosh Chodesh It's a Girl Thing. She received her Master of Social Work, MSW, from the University of Pennsylvania and a BA from Ithaca College. And our third presenter, Gilad Salmon, is the Director of the South Peninsula Jewish Teen Foundation and the Youth Philanthropy Initiative Coordinator. This past year marked Gilad's 4th year with the Jewish Teen Foundations. He feeds his addiction to philanthropy with active involvement in the Jewish Teen Funders Network's Professional Advisory Council, EPIP, Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, and YNPN, Young Nonprofit Professionals Network. Oh, and one more, and the 1% Foundation. Before I turn the call over to our presenters, I want to remind everyone that this call is called Innovations in Teen Philanthropy. As we all know, innovating can be tough. In some of our communities, change is slow, and it is wise to proceed cautiously. As you hear our speakers, please keep in mind that these programs are well established in the communities in which they exist. Before jumping to add new innovations to your program, we want to caution you to think hard with the stakeholders of your community about whether these changes and new ideas fit. It is crucial to make sure that your host institution is on board. For example, will they allow your teens to fundraise? And that you do not compromise the integrity of the program that you are already running. For example, do you really have the staff capacity to expand to an alumni program? Our presenters will help you with this process by sharing some of their challenges and recommendations for success, and we at JTFN, as well as the presenters, are available for individual follow-up conversations about how these innovations might fit into the dynamics in your community. So now, without further ado, let me hand off to the people you've really been waiting to hear from. We're going to begin with Stephanie.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Naomi's actually controlling my my slides, so I'm going to be asking her to move the slides for me. So Naomi, if you want to just jump to the first slide, that'd be great. Okay, so I want to just give you all a little background about what Voices is. Voices is a Jewish teen foundation that was started 9 years ago with an endowed grant from an anonymous donor. And until last year, the foundation was made up of 25 high school-age teens from across the Chicago area. But last year, we launched our first ever alumni program for teens who wish to participate for a second year. Every year, the foundation receives $25,000 from our endowment. And participants also contribute their own money to the grant-making pool. Voices meets on a monthly basis for about 2.5 hours in meetings throughout the school year. Over the last 8 years, Voices has allocated almost $250,000 to Jewish organizations in Chicago and all around the world. So we're very, very proud of our teams. Next slide, please. So why an alumni program? As I mentioned, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, the poll. I wanted to ask all of you, to participate in this poll. And if you could just answer this question, either yes or no, do you currently offer a separate program for students who wish to participate for a second year? So if you could just answer yes or no, then we can collect those results and share them with you so that we can all have a better feel for what our programs are like. And next slide. Mamie, can you move to the next slide? Oh, thank you. Okay. So why an alumni program? As I mentioned, we launched our alumni program last year. And up until last year, teams who wanted to participate in Voices for a second or a third year simply repeated the same program as before. While this was meaningful for our repeat participants, it became clear that we were really missing a great opportunity to take Voices to the next level and provide a really excellent intensive program. So last year, 8 participants expressed an interest in doing Voices again, but as a pilot alumni program. So when I say alumni, it's not so much that they're participants who have, moved out of Voices and are no longer participating. It's just a sort of a second level of the Voices program. The alumni split off from the main group, what we call Voices 101, and they ran their own philanthropic foundation, in addition to running a fundraising campaign and serving as peer mentors for the Voices 101 cohort. This meant that we increased our enrollment from 25 to 36 teams last year, and this year we expect around 40 in total. This also means that Voices is able to allocate a record-breaking $37,000 last year, which is about $10,000 more on average than Voices typically gives in a year. And we're going to move to the next slide. So how we did it. In order to get our program going, we needed 2 things, participants and a little bit of funding. As I mentioned, we had 8 alumni during our first year. We were also able to secure some seed money from our anonymous donor to get the program up and running. While Voices 101 receives a baseline of $25,000 from our endowment every year for grant making, our alumni program operates on a match system. So this incorporates a much more intensive fundraising component to the alumni curriculum, and it encourages the alumni members to raise as many dollars as possible. So for every dollar they raise, our donor matches it by $1.50. So last year, 8 alumni raised a little over $3,000, and that turned into just over $8,000 available for grant making, which was really spectacular, a really good start to our program. Next slide, please. How the alumni program functions. As I mentioned, last year was the pilot for our alumni program, so the alumni and I really built the curriculum together as we went along. This sometimes meant tweaking the curriculum when things weren't working well, and it also meant having a preliminary planning meeting over the summer in order to lay the foundation for what the year looked like. So during that meeting, the alumni members and I agreed to operate their year based on the regular Voices 101 schedule, meaning that they would have the same number of meetings throughout the year. Again, I think it's around 10 meetings a year, and essentially follow the same grant cycle. But because the alumni members already had a year of Voices training under their belts, their meetings did not have most of the educational components that the Voices 101 meetings had. Instead, they learned to translate what they learned during the previous year into more strategic, more intensive community needs research, due diligence, and site visit preparation. The alumni members would attend either the first or the second half of each Voices 101 meeting in order to lead programs or work directly with the Voices 101 committees. And then they would split off and run their own alumni members meeting focused on anything from their fundraising strategies, doing community needs research, designing programming for Voices 101, and reviewing grant proposals or preparing for site visits. Next slide, please. Okay. Let's see. So to sum up, the alumni members who helped to design this program really wanted to focus on 3 major skill sets: leadership, intensive philanthropy work, and fundraising. Next slide, please. Okay. So leadership. As leaders, the alumni were instrumental not only in helping to plan the curriculum for our Voices 101 all-day retreat at the beginning of the year, but they also attended the retreat in order to lead workshops and icebreakers. In addition, each year, the Voices 101 cohort of 25 teens, they split up into committees based on areas of interest, like aid to Israel or the environment or health and medicine, and these committees work together throughout the year to set their own grant guidelines and request their own grant proposals. So as leaders, each alumni took responsibility for one of the Voices 101 committees and acted as a peer mentor for them by offering insight about how to strategize their philanthropic work. It's really, we found it was a much more interesting way for the Voices 101 participants to learn because, you know, by the end of the year, they're all pretty much sick of hearing from me. So it was really nice for them to hear from their peers and learn from them. Lastly, alumni members consistently developed a curriculum and implemented programming for the Voices 101 cohort. Next slide, please. Intensive philanthropy work. As philanthropists, the alumni members operated their own philanthropic foundation, much like in Voices 101. But because most of their meetings did not involve learning specifics as they did in Voices 101, their time was really freed up to do more in-depth community needs research, preparing for more in-depth site visits, and maintaining stronger group communication. One major difference between Voices 101 and the alumni program is that instead of making public their RFP or request for proposal, like the Voices 101 cohort, the alumni members decided instead to invite specific organizations to apply for their funding. This was a really smart way to reduce the number of proposals that were submitted to them, which was really necessary to do because there were so fewer participants to handle them. Next slide, please. And fundraising is the last skill set that we really wanted to focus on this year. As I mentioned, the alumni also learned they learned about fundraising, which is something that is typically not covered in Voices 101. At the beginning of the year, the alumni played around with the idea of having a fundraising event, but they ended up deciding to raise their own to raise their own money independently. They each set a goal of raising $400 each, which they were successful in doing. But by the end of the year, they really wished that they had done an event anyway. So this is something that will likely happen next year. Mamie, did you want to do the poll results?
Sure.
Okay. So here are the results of our poll. It looks like 38% of you. Okay, so a little less than half of you do offer a second program to students who want to participate for a second year, and a little more than half of you don't offer those programs. So that's interesting. It'd be interesting to learn more about everybody else's alumni programs. Okay. Can we skip to the next slide?
Sure.
Thank you. So what worked? Yep. Great. What worked well? Because this was a pilot year, many things worked really well about the alumni program, but some things definitely need to be reworked for next year. The year started off very strong, with alumni members performing each of their 3 responsibilities seamlessly. Their communication outside of the context of in-person meetings was very strong, and I saw that they were holding each other accountable to follow through on their responsibilities. Throughout the year, each alumni member had a much stronger voice than the year before. This is due partially because there were less of them than last year, but also because they knew each other so well by then and felt more comfortable speaking up when they wanted to. This intergroup bonding really made their allocation process much stronger and much more strategic because they were really challenging each other to be more thoughtful in their decision making. I think one of the biggest successes of the year was the feeling of ownership and responsibility our alumni members felt for the program. They took their work very seriously throughout the year, and they were pretty much rock stars when it came to the Voices 101 meetings. When they walked in the room, the Voices 101 teams were really excited about it, and the alumni really loved to teach the Voices 101 participants, and they loved being seen by them as knowledgeable leaders. And we're going to skip to the next slide. So the areas to strengthen. again, while there was a lot that worked well for us last year, as I mentioned, there are definitely some areas for us to strengthen before next year. The overall biggest area to strengthen is having clearer, more transparent goals set from the beginning of the year. After speaking with the alumni members a few weeks ago, I learned that many times they felt sort of unsure about what was expected from them for the week or for the month, whether they should be focusing on fundraising or their philanthropic work or their engagement with the Voices 101 teams. The alumni also noticed that they noticed that the work they were doing with the Voices 101 committees sort of died out as the year went on, as their own philanthropic work became more of a priority. So next year we hope to maintain more consistent work with the Voices 101 committees. Lastly, I mentioned the alumni really regretted not having a fundraising event. Most of them relied upon their own families to write checks for them or asking friends, and this wasn't as satisfying to them as really getting out and raising the money on their own. So that's something that we're definitely going to try to do next year. And next slide, please. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we already have 15 alumni members signed up for next year, and expect that a few more might enroll over the summer. We have changed our application process to the alumni for the alumni program from the standard essay and written application to a one-on-one phone interview. This, I feel, really elevated the feel of the alumni program application process because it encouraged anyone who was interested to speak candidly about their interest in participating in such an intensive program. And I believe it also weeded out less enthused people from applying because the expectations and time commitment are definitely more for the alumni program than it is from Voices 101. And we want to make sure that those who participate know very clearly from the beginning what will be expected from them before they decide to commit for the next year. Next year, we also hope to secure increased matching funds because it seems like the alumni program will only continue to grow over time. I'd expect that we have the same number of alumni in the years to come that we do for the Voices 101 group. The alumni discussed working in on-site site visits rather than bringing in organization representatives to speak with them about grant proposals. That's what we typically do in Voices 101, and they definitely want to have a fundraising event. So lastly, we hope to publicize the work of the alumni members a little more in order to draw attention to their excellent work and really maintain that positive community buzz about the program because it really is pretty exciting and they do a lot of really good work and they spend a lot of time with it. So we just want to keep that good word going. So that pretty much wraps it up for my portion of the presentation. I think we have time for 2 questions, if there are any.
I have some questions. I'm actually going to – we have a bunch of questions, so I'm going to ask 2 of them that are some combination of what people ask in the chat box.
Sure.
And I'll do the asking because I'm going to combine those. So the one question is about staffing.
Sure.
How much staff time was allotted to the alumni program, and how much time did the alumni spend with you, the staff member?
Okay, so I would say that I probably spent, about 2.5 hours a month specifically with the alumni in person, but there's definitely some time outside of the context of those monthly meetings, email communication, following up, nudging them to get their work done. So I would say during a month, I would typically spend about between 7 and 10 hours a week, just sort of either planning, designing curriculum, or following up with them, or being with them in person.
And as an additional part to that question, how does that compare to how much time you spend with the alumni, with the 101 kids?
I would say that the planning, the curriculum development for Voices 101 is a little more intensive. I would say that I would say it's more like 10 to 12 hours a month for that I spend preparing for Voices 101.
Great. And the other question is, how did you train the alumni group to be peer mentors and for that role. What part of the question is, what does that training entail, and would you be willing to share any materials you have? And then the additional part is just, how did you prepare them to lead sessions?
How did I prepare them to lead? Okay. As far as training went, we didn't have any formal training this year. I think that's something that I'd like to change for next year. Again, this was our pilot year, so it was really just figuring out what sort of time commitments the alumni really had. And now that I have a better feel for that, I think that there's definitely room for some more training. But basically, we would talk about what the following month's meeting was going to look like, and whether or not any alumni wanted to lead any of the lesson plans that I had already developed. And if they did, then we talked about how they could do it. But I also encouraged them to think about how they would like to communicate material to the Voices 101 kids, because a lot of them felt very inspired to teach and to really do that peer mentoring. So I just sort of let them go with it. But as far as specific training, there wasn't any formal training. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. So we're going to hold on to the other questions. We may be able to get to them at the end of the call, and if not, I encourage you to be in touch with me, and I can put you in touch with Stephanie to help talk out some of your questions, especially if they pertain to an individual community. Stephanie, thank you so much. This was really interesting, and I think everyone learned a lot from it. We're going to move on to the second portion of our call, and Gilad, you're up.
Thanks, Naomi. So as Naomi said, we're going to be talking about fundraising online. And again, my name is Gilad Salmon. I'm at the San Francisco Bay Area Jewish Teen Foundation. Let's jump in here. So first up, what are the Jewish Teen Foundations? So just to give you a little background about our program in the Bay Area, we're located in the San Francisco area. We have 4 foundations that are based on they're each sort of geographic base. So we have some, all over the Bay Area. Each engages about 22 to 24 high school age teens. We've been in operation for 9 years, have over 500 alumni, and have raised and granted, these 500 alumni have raised and granted over $1 million, which is really incredible and also really fun to say. So we're in the middle of celebrating a lot of that work in the next few months. So the fundraising piece of our program. A couple of things to note about this. With fundraising, our program, Naomi started off the call by talking about innovations in teen philanthropy and being really thoughtful about adding fundraising into your program. Our fundraising program has been a part of our Youth Philanthropy program basically since the inception, and it has grown quite a bit, and the online portion is new within the last 2 years, but I do want to say that it's been a part of our program. And the reason we have a fundraising component, and, these are some of the lessons learned since seeing 500 teens go through the program, are a couple of things. One is that we believe that the fundraising piece ensures our participants have buy-in. When they are making allocations decisions at the end of the year, we're often hearing them talk about the responsibility that they have to their donors to ensure that their funds will be put to good use. They really own that responsibility and they take it seriously. Also, learning the responsibility of fundraising and following up with their donors has been an interesting process to watch unfold. And we've also seen teens now who are interested in development work, and that's very exciting to see, especially since I don't think high school teens or kids grow up saying, I want to be a development manager. And so I think exposing teens to the work of development is also a really important piece of the work that we do. The other piece I'll say about the fundraising is that, and Stephanie actually talked a little bit about this in terms of reaching out to your family and friends and your network. For us, we've seen that fundraising helps our teams, our program participants, realize the power in their network. They understand that even if they don't come from a wealthy family, many have plenty of family members that are willing to donate to a great cause. And even if that means, 20 donations or 15 donations of $10, they start realizing that there is power in their networks and that they can move people to give to a important cause. And so what does our fundraising program look like? It started out as offline fundraising, and there's still quite a bit of offline fundraising we do. And it looks like letters. We ask each team to write a letter to their donors. They usually dust off their old bat mitzvah lists and send it out to them. But we also encourage them to think about the people in their lives that aren't part of their family or their family networks, right? Like soccer coaches, or we've had teams ask their orthodontist. Sometimes they ask their friends' parents that they've, gotten to know very well. And so we ask them to really think about who's in their networks beyond just their family and friends. So they send them all a letter. They will usually follow it up with calls, and sometimes do face-to-face fundraising as well, especially during holidays. The timing of our fundraising is such that many of the teams are really in the thick of the fundraising during Passover. And so when they're seeing their family during Passover, and especially around the themes of justice and freedom that Passover bring with it, we really encourage them to speak to their family during that time and encourage them to give. So all of that is really fun, and it's been successful in the past. So why move it online? In the Bay Area, we had a couple of things that were going on that really pushed us to move online. One is that the amount of staff time it requires to track fundraising really necessitated something a little bit more efficient, and so that was one key piece of moving our fundraising online. But there are more important pieces, and that is that it provides opportunities for the teams to really own the process, and I'll show you in a little bit what I mean by that. And it's more fun. It's a lot more fun, and I'll show you examples of that as well. And online fundraising is growing, and it's the world that our teams live in, and so it's also more appropriate for our teams to be fundraising online. So I'd like to move over into a poll. And that is, I'd like to ask you all, so we actually have the wrong poll in here. So listen up to the question and answer yes or no to the question that I gave you. So the question is, I'm interested to know if anyone on the call has participated in...
Gilad, I'm fixing it. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
There it is.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you. So the question is, have you fundraised online for a walk, something like the Avon Walk or a marathon or in honor of a bar bat mitzvah or a wedding or some sort of other life cycle event? So I'll give a few more seconds for answers to come in. Okay. So it looks like if we're looking at this, the answers here, we've got 40% that say yes, and well, it's jumping around, but we have 9 yeses so far and 12 no's. And that really helps me see that, there are many people on the call, almost half of the people on the call have participated in some sort of fundraising event and used online fundraising to reach out to their networks and ask for funds. And I think it's important to think about it in terms of incorporating online fundraising into your Jewish Youth Philanthropy program, because this is something that we as adults are already engaging in, and so why not provide a Jewish frame for our teams to think about this work and also to really empower them to do this work as they go on throughout their lives. I've had experiences where friends have asked me to donate to their, to their page for a Hazon bike ride, and it was really interesting to see that the person that was asking me could have really used some more strategies on how to fundraise online more effectively. And so I think we're really arming our teams to engage with other organizations later on in life if we provide them these fundraising opportunities at high schools. So the next slide is what our fundraising pages look like. And this is from Olivia Cornfield, who we recently had a parent education event, and we asked a few of our teams to share what they loved about the program. And Olivia got up there and said, "I love fundraising." She spoke about how exciting it was to reach out to family and friends and fundraise. And she also talked about a donor who actually thanked her for giving her the opportunity, for giving the donor the opportunity to give. And I think that's really powerful. So when you're looking at online fundraising, before I begin, I want to say one thing, which is that I'm showing you examples of our platform that we're using. It's razoo.com. And I will just put it out there that I'm working with Razoo on a project called Give Jewishly. So I just want to put that out there as a possible conflict of interest. But I will be talking later on and giving you some suggestions of other platforms to look at. For us, Razoo just happened to fit in line with everything that we were looking for. So this is what a fundraising page looks like on Razoo. And you'll see that at the very top, we've got Olivia's picture, which, was really fun for our donors for the first time to see when they're getting to the part of the process where they're actually donating, to see the team's face as they were donating. You'll see on the right-hand side that, that it's showing Olivia's goal of raising $3,000, how much she's already raised, both online and offline. And what's really exciting is that she was able to say, hey, based on what I have, what I feel comfortable asking my donors to give, I can create different giving amounts. So she started at 36 and went up to $144. And for each one of them, she put this nice little message, this text, like warm support stability, because we were funding health and shelter this year. And each one of our teams was able to talk with their families and say, based on the people I'm reaching out to, this is what I feel comfortable asking. So some people started at $10, and and some people went up to $500 for their top amount. And on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a video in here. And it's really exciting that our team, once we moved online, we were able to add to our program a component of creating a fundraising video together. So we took some time at one of our meetings and gave each one of our board groups a different piece of the video that they had to come up with. They worked on it for a little bit, and then we took a small camera, a flip cam, but you could use an iPhone camera or whatever it is. This isn't professional video equipment, and we asked them to film it, and we just put it together really quickly. And each one of the teams had the opportunity to either put that video on their page, or they could put photos or even a different video. So that's one thing that I'll say, is that moving our fundraising online has been really exciting in terms of being able to create different videos. It's also fun in terms of getting to share these videos with potential Teen Foundation applicants so that they can see what the process is like. And they get to, and the donors get to see their team, the team that's soliciting them for a donation, in action and talking about the things that matter to them. And really, one key piece of Jewish Youth Philanthropy programs is the Jewish component. And so in each of our videos, they're speaking about Jewish text or what makes, the cause that they care about a Jewish concern. And so here you can see 3 videos from 3 of our foundations this year. And they're all available on YouTube. If you wanted to search for them, we can send you some examples. The other fun piece of fundraising online is that there's now dynamic interaction between the team fundraiser and their donors. And so you can see here that, this again, it comes from Olivia's page. You can see all the comments that her donors left her after they donated. And, the teams have talked about really loving being able to go online and see all these notes of encouragement and see that as the money was coming in. And what I really love about this is that it's about, that the donors are really, it's about leaving a message and a comment for the solicitor, but there's no mention of money. So Colette Myers here doesn't talk about the fact that that she, it doesn't mention that she donated $180 or $36. It's really about saying, hey, this is an interaction between the donor and the solicitor, and it's more about the message than it is about the money. You can't see it here, but the solicitor, the team board member, can actually also add updates. So she could say, hey, we just got, 30 proposals in for our team foundation, and we're really excited to raise some more money for these incredible organizations. So that's really exciting. The other thing that's really fun about this dynamic interaction is that each team was able to create different thank you notes for their donors, and those were sent out automatically with the tax receipt. So let me move on to the next slide. And this is what you should think about before fundraising online. So the first thing you'll need to do is to pick a platform. And that is the actual, online technology partner that you're going to encourage all of your teams to create personal fundraising pages on. And you can see on the right-hand side a list of some of the fundraising platforms available. And you can always email me or email JTFN, and I can help you. I can share some articles with comparing what the different platforms are. But one you want to look at is processing and use fees. So each platform typically has a fee. The processing fee is, usually a fee for actually charging the credit card, and it tends to run between 2.9% and 3.5%. And then some platforms, but not all, have use fees on top of that, which means, an extra couple percentage points that the platform itself uses to run its operation. You'll want to think about whether or not you'll get any offline donations. Think about, grandma donating at Passover. She's probably not going to pull out her iPhone and go onto the mobile website and donate. And so, you'll probably either get cash or check from grandma, and you'll want to be able to ensure that the offline donations get reflected on the team's fundraising page. For us, it was really important that there be a great degree of team ownership so that every team page looked different, and that we weren't, and that they had an opportunity to have their personality and their effort reflected in the personal fundraising page. You want to think about whether or not photos and videos, whether the platform will offer you an opportunity to post photos or videos. And then also the dynamic piece we talked about around comments and updates. And then very important is ease of use. How user-friendly is the site? How easy is it going to be for your teams to set up a page? How easy is it going to be for your donors to donate? And that's really important. You'll want to provide, before fundraising online, after you've picked a platform, you'll want to provide content. And what I mean by that is that you want to give the teams an opportunity, either give them some sample fundraising prompts that they can put on their pages online, or give them some, have them research statistics that they'll include in there. If you're going to create a video together, you'll need to give them the link to the video. You definitely want to give them suggestions and possibly examples of content that they can put on their fundraising page so that when their donors get to their page, they don't see an empty page or something that isn't very moving or exciting. And you'll also want to provide your teams a clear timeline and instruction. So, let them know, hey, we're at this board meeting, we're introducing this online fundraising component. You should have your online fundraising page completed, within 3 weeks. And then this is the date when we're going to end all donations online. So you'll really want to be clear around the timeline and also what they should do if they get an offline donation or, making sure that they thank all their donors. Clear instructions are really important. And then, my last message here is just that fundraising starts with fun. It's a bit cheesy, but it is really, many of our teams when they first hear about the fundraising, they have a bit of apprehension and anxiety. And as the process moves on, it becomes incredibly fun as the donations start coming in. They learn from the rejections, from friends and family saying no. But all in all, most of our teams come back to us and say that they had a great time with it and that, actual donor solicitation, going to a donor and saying, this is something that's important to me and, would you join me is something that they really enjoyed.
Gilad, thank you so much. We actually had a couple questions, but then it turned out you answered most of them. So I'm going to ask you to answer one briefly, and then I want to move on to Leah to be sure that we have enough time. So the question is, was there any concern from your parent federation that this kind of fundraising would conflict with fundraising for the annual campaign?
So that's interesting. So we actually have been fundraising, again, since the inception of the program. So fundraising offline or online wasn't a concern from our host federation. And, what I will say is that many of our federation donors give both to the federation and to the team's fundraising online. And that for us, a lot of our teams are actually reaching out to networks, they're reaching out to their networks and teams, as all of us, are really global citizens today. And so we get donations from Australia and Israel and New York and all around the world. And so a lot of these donations actually end up coming from outside of our Federation service area. So that doesn't directly answer the question around concern from the parent federation. There wasn't concern because it was a part of our program. But also I think part of it is a recognition that many of these donors are coming from outside the Federation service area.
Great. Thank you so much, Gilad. We're going to move on to Leah's portion, the last portion of our call for today.
Great. Thanks. Hi, everybody. All right. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about collaboration, how we've used it here with the Jewish Youth Philanthropy Initiative at the partnership. We're right outside DC, and a little bit of background on our program. That's Naomi. On my screen, I'm clicking on the next slide, but it's not appearing. Is it appearing on yours?
It is not, so I'm going to do it for you.
Thank you. No so we're outside D.C., and our program has been around we just finished our 12th year of programming. Our staff breakdown is that we have one full-time staff person, me, an administrator, and then each group actually has 2 facilitators who receive a stipend, but I always say they're sort of volunteers because I wish we could pay them a whole lot more. And the teams in our program are anywhere from 8th through 12th grade. It depends on the groups. Most of our first-year groups are 8th and 9th graders. Most of our second-level group are all 9th through 12th, with primarily most of them being 10th, 11th, and 12th. And before I talk about collaboration, I just want to take a quick poll. Naomi, if you can move the slide for me, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Do you currently partner or collaborate with a congregation or multiple congregations in your community to run a teen philanthropy group? And I think there are a couple of people on the call who are actually from congregations who are trying to start a program. Are you working with anyone else in your community? Give everybody a second. Okay. So it looks like most people are kind of more on the no side. So, and we have 3 people who say yes. So that's a few more. 4 to 14. I'm going to keep going because I know we're tight on time. But so I define collaboration 2 ways when I'm talking about programming, and to make this call, keep it simplified, I'm going to stop saying collaborative groups, and instead I'm going to talk about our congregation model and our agency model. The congregation model, we have 2 to 4 congregations come together to basically co-sponsor a collaborative group. And one sort of caveat of this is technically the other partners could be like a community youth group. It's just so far right now we've had all congregations. And then the second model I'm going to talk about is something we call our agency model, and our program that we're working with right now is the Hebrew Home of Greater Washington. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about what each program involves, but collaboration overall definition is just to work together to achieve a goal. And our goal with these models is to expand capacity within the congregations to support and implement philanthropy education, to increase the number of teens engaging in Jewish philanthropy overall in our community, and to foster meaningful teen engagement in philanthropy. So moving on to our next slide, we'll focus a little bit more on the congregation model. So this is just a quick breakdown of what the division of responsibilities are between JYPI, the staff person, which is me, the congregations themselves, and then the facilitators who are actually the ones running all the sessions and working with the teams directly. So we provide the training, the content, we adapt marketing materials, we do participant referrals. So because a lot of people in the community know that we run these programs, people will contact us and want to know, where are groups happening. And then we actually work with both the facilitators and the congregations, especially in the first year of the program, helping them in the planning phases and as the program is running, sort of addressing any bumps in the road they may hit. And we also provide half the matching funds. So the teens in every group contribute $250. We match each teen $125, and then each congregation matches their teens who are participating $125. And so, for instance, in one group we had this year, we had 3 congregations co-hosting. So they all put in for the number of teens they had. And in some cases, we had kids participating who weren't from those congregations. So those teens either went to their own congregation or, were challenged to find a sponsor for their 125. So for congregations, they're responsible for, they're the primary recruiter. So while we do participant referral when people contact us, the congregations are responsible for filling the slots in the program. They process the registration, they secure the facilitators, handle all the logistics, program costs, and half the matching funds. And I'm sure one question a lot of people often ask is about how do they cover things like the program costs. We've had groups decide to implement a registration fee on top of the contribution, and we also have something in our community through our federation. Congregations can apply for small cluster grants if they're working with other congregations on a program. So that's another source of funding that they've sought to cover things like facilitator stipends. However, that funding never covers the matching funds. That's always something congregations have to come up with internally. And then if we want to move to the next slide. So what are the advantages and challenges of doing this model? One, the major advantages for sure are for the partnership, which is the JYPI's parent organization, it enables us to offer more programs, more groups, because the more partners we have, and once the programs are up and running, the more groups we're able to oversee without necessarily doing all the direct coordinating for each group. For the congregation, something that we've heard from a lot over the years is, we want to be able to fit this into our program or offer it directly to our teams. We want to be involved in making that connection, and we also want control over some of the logistics, like what day of the week and what time, and which teams, what grades are we talking about. So by doing this collaboration, those kind of logistical decisions are totally up to the collaborative group. We're really here to provide the content and the training and that kind of support. But, if they want to run it on a Tuesday at 6 o'clock, that's fine, fine with me. Then I'd say one of the other advantages that isn't on the bullets, but I just always like to throw out there, is that to me the funds in this type of program really have triple value, because the money that the teams are contributing, as well as what's being matched by the congregation and the partnership, JYPI's parent organization, is being used to allow the teams to be educated in philanthropy. It's also helping to build community among the congregations and our organization, who are working together to achieve this program. And then ultimately, it still goes to a worthwhile organization, that the teams have decided should receive funding. So with the challenges, one challenge for sure, which I think goes back to kind of Naomi's overall opening statement, is that the pilot year for any collaborative is going to take more time than, when you're into your rhythm of just sort of running your program as you've always run it. So that's definitely something for sure to take into consideration. And I think every year a group runs. We have one collaborative, which was our pilot 3 years ago. They're the ones most able to run self-sufficiently. We do a planning meeting at the beginning of the year, an evaluation at the end of the year, and as the facilitators need assistance or have a question that's programmatic, they come to me. But less of the how do we do this, those kinds of questions aren't coming up anymore, because, they're into their third year. And then I think the last challenge is just getting congregations to think outside the box. We work with, usually our point person is the education director. So they have a very different structure than what I would say we think of as our extracurricular program. So sometimes it takes some more creative thinking and questions. And one of the other examples of that I've found is when we talk about the collaborative match. The first response from a lot of congregations is, this isn't on our budget line. But when you start to talk to them about, is there a rabbi fund? Is there a tzedakah fund? Is this something the sisterhood or brotherhood would be interested in supporting? Suddenly they start thinking, they're like, we know somebody who would be really interested in this kind of programming to help us provide the match. So I've just learned that can't always take their first answer, and got to sort of talk it out, because we're all coming from different perspectives. Next slide.
I just want to say for 1 minute that I know we're nearing up against 1:30, so in respect for everyone's time, if you need to go, this call recording will also be posted online. We hope that you will stay with us for an extra 5 to 10 minutes, because Leah has some really interesting things to present.
And actually, given the time, I'm going to skip over quickly the next slide that starts with recommendations from congregations who have participated. All those are things that we've asked the congregations, like, what do you wish you knew, or sort of what would you advise other people? So I definitely encourage anybody who's sort of interested in this to take a look at that. But just an idea to sort of think about is, I was looking back when I was getting ready for this call, our pilot group started planning 13 months before the group started. Now, that was our first pilot also. In the groups since, I would say most of the planning has gone 7 to 9 months ahead of time. Also because congregation programs within their religious schools they plan it out a year in advance. So 7 to 9 months is, usually around the time they're ready to sit down and look at that. So just another one of those pieces to sort of take into consideration. And now I'm going to go over talk a little bit about our next collaboration, which is what I was saying is called agency-based. So we work with the Hebrew Home of Greater Washington, and they started a Youth Philanthropy Board. This is the 3rd year. So they came to us 4 years ago and said, there's a program in Cleveland that they have a Teen Philanthropy Board. We know you do this type of thing. Can you help us create something internally? And especially for those of you who run groups, I mean, I'm sure hearing, okay, you're going to look at only one organization. How do you do that? And what the teams actually do is they look at different departments within the Hebrew Home. So the Hebrew Home is a very large agency, if not the largest, one of the largest in our community. So they have a number of different departments, including, IT, nursing, therapeutic rec, physical therapy. So there are lots of areas for them to consider proposals. And then the Jewish values and education piece, it's still the philanthropy education, but we're looking at it more in depth within one issue area and within one nonprofit to really understand what it takes to run a nonprofit versus, the breadth of all the issues that the teams could be looking at. And going on to the next slide. So the division of responsibilities is similar to the congregation model with a couple of key differences. One is that we do not provide any matching funds. So one of the differences about this is that when we've worked with the Hebrew Home and as we're looking to work with other nonprofits, we often meet with the development team rather than a programming team or an education team, usually because these organizations might not have it for teens. So they're really looking at it as a development opportunity and a way to engage teens in ways they haven't been. So for the Hebrew Home, one of their challenges was they have a core of teen volunteers, but there are plenty of teens who do not want to volunteer at the Hebrew Home. And then they had all these families who have a history of being involved, but again, they couldn't get their teens to come volunteer with them or, couldn't figure out a way to engage them. So one of the ways is they wanted to do this program and really use it as a way to also build up their donors. So they actually went to a donor to match what the teams contributed. Each team contributed $250. And actually, after the first year, the program was so successful that they were able to create an endowment that'll continue to match the teams who participate, hopefully for a very, very long time. So the breakdown of responsibilities is similar to what the congregation model is. And again, we train the facilitators and work with them on the content pieces. I will say one place where the content is very different is that a big part of this is also helping the teens get to know the organization. So for instance, the Hebrew Home on the first session, the teens do this type of scavenger hunt to really understand the scope of everything the Hebrew Home covers. So there is some pieces of curriculum that are more developed by the agency because they know their own history and, the topics and the language that the teens need to get familiar with. So we help them sort of on best education practices for presenting that information, but they sort of figure out what it is they want to educate the teens on on the issue. So then on the next side are really the advantages and challenges of this collaboration. Most of them I've already touched on. I think one of the only different challenges is that, we are working with development staff rather than programming or education staff. So that really is the expertise we're bringing. And it also means, again, helping them sometimes think outside the box or, they may be really great with sort of organizing the logistics, getting kids where they need to be. I think with this group, one of the things I found really helpful is their ability to find a really strong facilitator who has experience with teens, who's comfortable in this kind of setting, was key because that person needed to be independent enough or, talk to me about, a question or a bump in the road because the person supervising them at the organization is a development person, not a team programmer person. And then the last slide is more just a few questions. If either of these models are sounding interesting, then I think, I'm happy to talk to anybody. Naomi has all my information, but I think the three really important questions are why collaborate, who are your natural partners, and how do you know you're ready? By natural partners, with both collaborations, with the Hebrew Home, they approached us. With the congregation model, the group we started with, one of the very first congregations, is one that had asked me, over the years, every time he'd recommend a few kids to the program, he'd say, okay, how can we actually bring this into my synagogue? So that's who I started talking to first. For another one of our collaboratives, it's somebody who recommended, 10 kids, and not just recommended them, but got 10 kids to participate every single year. So these were already people who believe in the importance of the program, and while they may not know the logistics or the actual content, forwards and backwards, they know it's worth investing. Because I will say what's not worth it is arm twisting. You want people who are excited about this, even if they don't necessarily know what they're totally getting themselves into. And then how do you know you're ready? It is a big time commitment in that first year. I was working on a couple different groups plus this program. So I think it's an assessment you have to make, but I think in the end for us as we were looking towards how do we keep this program growing, especially in an economy where that's very difficult, this was a model that allowed us to both meet our own priority of engaging and collaborating with our community, which is a requirement of the Partnership for Jewish Life and Living as a whole, and then how do we continue to grow the JYPI program specifically. So and I think I will stop there.
Great, Leah. Thank you so much. I want to give you the opportunity. We have a couple of questions, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to answer one of those, and I encourage anyone else with questions to send those to me, and I'll connect you with Leah, and she'd love to be in touch. So the question is, can you tell us about your facilitator training? How many sessions? What does it entail? How do you pick the facilitators?
Yeah. So in terms of picking the facilitators, with each collaborative group, whether agency or congregation, I first talk to the partners about sort of what our typical job description is, type of people we're looking for. All of the groups are facilitated by two people, and what I always say is we're looking for the dream team combination of somebody who has the Jewish education background, can seize on those, teachable Jewish value moments that you can't script, but when they happen, you really want to be able to jump on it. Definitely somebody who has that camp type of background and can, really be flexible and, as things change, just sort of go with it. And then someone with the nonprofit development or, as a philanthropist background. Those are three different backgrounds. What I found is for the most part, we usually get some combination of the two, which is why we tend to use two facilitators. And in terms of the actual training, right now the training is one day for about three and a half hours. We're actually talking about how to adjust that, but they do the training, which is a combination of the Jewish value activities and sort of the couple core ones that we use in every program to give them a chance to do it for themselves and sort of pick out their own highlights. And then the other half of the program is really more about the structure for the how to work with the nonprofits and things related to getting in the grant proposals and those kind of pieces. We are looking at possibly dividing it into two sessions. And then the other piece that we do with the facilitators is I'm available for Q&A as they need. And we also usually do a check-in with all of the facilitators before the funding session because that's often one where especially for our new facilitators who don't really know what to expect, that tends to be where we get a lot of questions is for the session right before the funding session and then the funding session itself.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. I want to thank all of our presenters for participating today. I know that there were some other, and all of our participants as well. I know that there were some other questions out there, so please email me with any of those questions again, and I'll make sure to connect you to the correct person. I just want to remind everyone that our next Lunch and Learn call is on July 10th, and it's titled Beyond the First Year, Institutionalizing Your Teen Foundation. We'll hear from Dana Sheenan about this topic. And if you want to sign up, because we have the capability today, I'm just sending you the link to sign up right now so you won't miss it. That should be in your chat box now. So before we hang up, I just want to unmute everyone so we can all thank Leah and Gilad and Stephanie for all of their wonderful input. So you should be...
The conference has been unmuted.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's great.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.